right, good morning, everyone. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Sure. Speakers, if you could make sure that you mute your microphone till your time comes up, please do so. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning at our first regional town hall, virtual town hall event. I'm Robert Hyatt, your Southeastern Regional Director. We've got a exciting lineup this morning, good speakers, great reports, and we appreciate all of y'all taking time to be with us today. So without any further ado, we'll get rolling here. So the reason that we decided to do these virtual town hall events was partially in response to the COVID pandemic that's going on and the need to meet remotely and continue networking and sharing ideas. But the other reason is as the Southeastern group for CTAA, we needed to meet more regularly in between annual conference events and virtual technology, and everyone adapting and implementing it right now provides us a good platform to do so. We hope to do more of these each year, and we hope that you'll join us. So again, our purpose for doing these is to help you as members get some dialogue between yourselves, your state delegates, board members, and CTAA staff, as well as share important news and updates in the Southeastern region, and then to hear about transit innovations, opportunities, and to receive live feedback from members. So as we go through, you'll see you should have a Q&A box where you can type in questions. We'll have a segment later in the agenda for that. We'll feed those, and we'll see what we can answer today. And if there's anything that we can't answer, we'll come back and we'll make sure that we do follow up. So I wanted to start real quickly. Our CTAA Board of Directors and our state delegates do a lot of work each year, representing you all, making sure that feedback is going both ways. And we just want to take a moment to identify those. I think everybody should be up on the camera. So we've got Ann August, who's a national director out of South Carolina, myself based out of North Carolina, Joanne Hutchinson based out of Florida. She's waving at us down there. We have John Autry from Alabama, Karen Deagle, who couldn't be here with us today, but we have Lisa Baycott with us. Butch McDuffie from Georgia, Pam Shepard from Kentucky, Sabrina Bartley from Mississippi, David Rue from North Carolina, John Ando from South Carolina, and Lisa Maragnano from Tennessee. And she unfortunately is not able to join us today, but sends her best. Our CTAA Town Hall staff, we've got Scott Bogren, our fabulous executive director, with us today. We have L'Oreal Lance, our membership and business development director, and Taylor Clark, our communication and legislative specialist. So a big shout out to our CTAA staff for helping us pull off this event today. And they'll be with us on and off through the rest of the program. If anyone needs to contact me for any reason, my information is here, along with my email address, and these slides will be shared with everyone after the town hall event concludes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, Scott Bogren, to introduce our key speaker today, Dr. Yvette Taylor, our Region 4 FTA Administrator. We greatly appreciate you spending your time with us today, and we look forward to hearing your updates.
Thank you, Robert, and thanks to the CTAA staff, particularly Taylor and L'Oreal, who were the driving forces behind this. And you know, this is a large region. It's the largest region of any of the regions in FTA. And as you can see, we need 3 board members just to try to keep up with what's going on, all the great stuff that goes on in Region 4. But at the FTA level, there's only one person, Dr. Yvette Taylor, who has the largest region in FTA. Dr. Taylor has been the Region 4 Administrator since October 30, 2005, 15 years. So happy belated 15th anniversary on that. And, you know, I can read the bio, but I really wanted to make sure that everybody understood that in Dr. Taylor, we really have a partner and somebody who has, at every occasion that CTAA has asked for assistance, guidance, participation, always shows up. And, you know, that's one of the main things that you look for as a national organization, on people you can work. There are people who you can count on. Dr. Taylor has always been that for us. So we appreciate her graciously giving her time today. And without any further introduction, I'd like to both thank and welcome Dr. Yvette Taylor to our Southeast Region Town Hall. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. It's always an honor to be in your presence, right? And I do miss our face-to-face gatherings when we're traveling and speaking on the same podium. And to all of the grantees out there, the ones that I've seen on video, it is awesome to see your faces. Some of you I haven't seen in a long time, but know, and I know that you're doing well, and that makes me feel good. So it's great to be a part of today's discussion. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I also want to bring greetings from our FTA Deputy Administrator, Jane Williams, and of course, the USDOT Secretary, Elaine Chow, and just send their greetings and their sincere gratitude for all that you guys are doing and bringing safe and reliable transit to your communities. I know it's been certainly unprecedented, challenging times that we're all dealing with, as you said, Scott, for the past 8 months. It's just a different world that we live in. And we are especially grateful knowing the challenges that you all have faced, right? That you faced with the pandemic, yet you continue to do what you do best. And you guys find ways to be there for the riding public. And I just want to say thank you so very much. FTA has relied on you too. We've been relying on you during these unprecedented times. And it's to keep the lines of communications open. It's to gather important information that can help us be in a better position going forward. And you all have done an excellent job in responding to our data calls. I know we've asked for a number of transit workers out there. We wanted to be able to distribute masks to our large urbanized transit systems and send it to our state DOTs so they can help distribute it to the smaller agencies. But that required you providing the data to us, and we appreciate that. And just most recently, we were gathering data on the COVID-19 vaccination in hopes of being able to be ready to say transit should be a priority in getting those vaccinations. You all are interfacing with the public on a regular basis. It's really important for our agency to understand how many of your own staff, your contractors are out there so that we can be in a position to help be an advocate for you guys. So again, just thank you for the data calls. I know it's been a lot. Thank you for your patience. When we ask for information, it's usually for a reason that we need to gather that for our headquarters office. So again, thank you for being responsive to us. All right, so for over the next few minutes, what I wanted to briefly share with you guys is I always love, and Scott probably is used to me saying this, I love to highlight the great work that we've done, right? You can focus on the bad, but my philosophy is I'm going to take a moment to celebrate the successes. So I am going to talk a little bit about the great work that we've done together in FY20 across the entire Southeastern region. I also talk about the discretionary programs that you've seen in the Federal Register in FY20. Our hopes is that you will see the same types of discretionary programs going forward in FY21. I have a few national updates to share, and then I want to talk about plans for FY21. All right, so let's start with some quick highlights of FY20 accomplishments. So in our region, as we are one of the largest regions in FTA, we awarded this year 483 grants totaling $3.6 billion. Now that's about 2.5 times the amount that we typically award annually. And you guessed it right, this is due primarily to the CARES Act funding. And so just for the CARES Act funding alone, we awarded 134 grants across our region for $2.2 billion. We had $2.7 billion allocated or appropriated to us. We're almost there, so we have just a little bit more to get done, and hopefully we will do that in FY21. So in addition to the CARES Act, we've also had emergency relief funding in our region. Unfortunately, the Southeastern region is hit pretty hard with Mother Nature, and so we've been able to obligate an additional $38 million in fiscal year 20. So that's bringing our cumulative total now up to about $80 million that we put out to our transit grantees to help support emergency relief efforts. So thank you for that if you're recipients of any of those dollars. I just want to say that you're to be commended for getting all of those grant applications in. You were submitting the CARES Act grant funding while you were still coming in for the formula, or some of you were coming in for the discretionary grant applications. That's a lot of things you were juggling, and you are to be commended for doing that while actually delivering transit. Out there dealing with the public, you were still getting all the paperwork done. So thank you so much. So again, when we think about the COVID-19, I think all of us have been consumed with the COVID response and preparation. You guys have been on the front lines providing those critical services. I know you've been transporting even healthcare workers who's out there fighting the virus on our behalf. So again, we appreciate what you're doing, wearing those masks, having masks available, hopefully for some of your riders. And it's just been a great team effort to see how this particular industry has come together to help each other and to share lessons learned. That's been really valuable for all of us. And so just like many of you, I think many of you are still probably teleworking. We are in 100% telework for the most part out in the regions. Headquarters has started to trickle back in a phased approach, but we're still teleworking. But I hope that that does not impact the type of service that my region is providing to you. It should be transparent. We should be responsive and timely to any of your questions or concerns that you have. If not, I expect to get a phone call from you guys and let me know that. We'll continue to telework. It's unknown when we will return to the office because the cases in many places now are starting to rise again. But that also impacts our ability to travel. So right now there's no travel for the region that we've planned so far. I just want to share a couple of things that we have done that we feel have been very proactive in working with the transit industry. We've been trying to provide real-time technical assistance to our grantees. We facilitated acquiring those personal protective equipment To help you guys out, we've identified regulatory and administrative relief to support your operations and economic recovery. Of course, providing the additional federal funds, which has been a huge help, the $25 billion that was appropriated by Congress under the CARES Act for FTA to administer. So we're really proud of that. Just as, you know, as an agency as a whole, we have obligated nearly 94% of those dollars. And we've done that in a relatively short period of time. We could not have done that if the grantees weren't very responsive to us. So we take pride in that. So out of the money obligated, we've already dispersed about $13 or $14 billion. So here's a plug. If you have your CARES Act grant obligated, you know you had those expenses incurred, go ahead and draw down the money. We want you to draw down the funds, and we should see that getting closer to zero by FY21. All those dollars should be liquidated on a relatively fast pace. So other things that we've seen just across the agency that we've been working with, and hopefully it's been valuable to you guys, is that we've been putting information up on our website, right? And so we have a landing page. We have a FTA COVID-19 landing page. If you haven't viewed it, you should go onto our link. And what it does, it compiles all the guidance, all the safety advisories, any federal resources for transit. It has our listening sessions posted there. And so it's just a wealth of information, and it's available to you should you have the time and interest in looking at it. We have been doing the listening sessions. Hopefully some of you have attended some of those. We've had 6 so far. We have the final one, I believe, that's coming up, the 7th one on December 15th from 1:30 to 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so these sessions are hosted by our Deputy Administrator Williams, and she typically showcases various transit agencies to share among their peers some of their lessons learned or best practices. So on December 15th, there's going to be a focus on how transit agencies understand and address the changing rider needs. So that's going to be the topic that's coming up in just, I guess, next week on December the 15th. So if you haven't, go ahead and register and plan to sit in and chime in. You have an opportunity to ask questions too of the Deputy Administrator as well as your peers. All right, so let's move on to discretionary programs in FY20. We have been very, very busy in FY20. We are hoping that we will be just as busy going forward in FY21. But just want to run down through some of the programs that we've made available this fiscal year. And hopefully, I know within my region, we've had a lot of grantees that were recipients of these dollars. So I always say, if you don't put in, you're not going to be considered. So take the time to put those applications in and try to get some of those discretionary dollars. All right, so we had our bus and bus facility program. This was $464 million that we provided. Of course, it's for the replacement or rehabbing or purchasing of buses or bus-related equipment, you know, as well as constructing bus-related facilities. We had the low or no emission program for $130 million. And this was for the purchase or lease of low or no emission buses and related equipment, as well as to lease, construct, or rehabilitate facilities to support the low or no emission buses. Passenger ferry grant program, $47.5 million made available for public ferry systems in urbanized areas. Believe it or not, we definitely have ferries in our region. Savannah is a big proponent of ferries. Puerto Rico, my gosh, they rely on that like we do as New York relies on the rail to get them around. Ferries is very critical in Puerto Rico. We had the Accelerating Innovative Mobility, AMI. This was a new discretionary program, and it was supporting and advancing innovation in transit. And I heard someone say we may hear a little bit more about what's going on in terms of what's innovative out there that folks are starting to embrace. We also have the Access and Mobility Partnership Grants for innovative capital projects. This is for the transportation disadvantaged, helping to coordinate transportation services and non-emergency medical services, doing that coordination effort. Build is another program. It's an OST-led program. We used to call it Tiger. This one is, you know, allowing investment in your major or big transportation infrastructure projects, but it includes transit too. It can be ports, it can be highways, it can be bridges, but transit is a part of that, and we've been getting a certain portion of those funds once those are made available. CIG is our multi-year process for investments in heavy rail, light rail, commuter rail, streetcars, bus rapid transit, which is the most popular. This is a very rigorous process. I know we're working with MARTA right now in the state of Georgia that they may be gearing up to try to come in for some of the CIG funding. Florida is a big recipient of some of those dollars, as well as North Carolina for us. All right, Expedited Project Delivery Pilot Program for $225 million. So this is aimed at expediting the delivery of any new fixed guideway capital projects, small starts or core capacity improvement projects. So that has been a focus for us as well in FY20, and there's no end date to that, right? So if you have a project that would be considered eligible, I think you have to be through NEPA. You can come in at any time and put forth a proposal to see if your project would warrant some of these dollars under our Expedited Project Delivery Program, pilot program. We had HOPE this year, another new one, helping obtain prosperity for everyone. And this is supporting transportation challenges faced by areas of persistent poverty, oftentimes in our rural areas. We had a pilot program for TOD, $6.2 million to look at integrating land use with planned future CIG projects. I know, again, we're working with North Carolina DOT, who's receiving some of those dollars to start planning for some type of rail project running out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Another new one we had is the Public Transportation COVID-19 Research Transportation Demonstration Program for $10 million. So this one was a focus on developing, deploying, and demonstrating innovative solutions that address COVID-19 concerns to increase overall operating efficiencies and improve mobility. So interesting enough on that one, it closed not too long ago. We're reviewing the proposals. And just last week, I had a conversation with Memphis Area Transit Authority, with Gary Rosenfeld. And he was sharing with me this cool idea of what they're thinking about trying to do is being able to detect when a person entered the bus, if they're showing symptoms of COVID, they would have some type of, it's a system or technology integrated into their surveillance system that can pick up on certain things, pick up on coughing, for example, be able to address the individual or get them help if they need it or get them tested, and be able to immediately take their buses into cleaning and disinfecting. So there's a whole big thing around it, but I said, Gary, you just missed the opportunity to put that in for this project, for this demonstration program. So he had an opportunity yesterday to brief the acting administrator, the deputy administrator, Jane Williams, and she was really impressed with just sort of this cutting edge of what people are trying to do. So again, it's some type of software that can pick up the symptoms early that will hopefully give you early intervention. It can help do contact tracing should that person test positive and would have been on a particular bus at the time. And so the last program I have is a tribal transit program for $5 million. This is for Indian tribes to provide transportation services on and around an Indian reservation or tribal land and rural areas. Again, we do have a few tribes that's within our region, and hopefully we've been successful in getting them some additional funding. Okay, I'm going to breeze through this really quick, but you know, policies are so important. You take the federal dollar, you got to comply with the rules. So just a quick reminder to everyone, there is a new joint development circular that's out there that talks about trying to streamline that process. If you are working with private developers, working with us early on to get approval through the joint development process. The safety, right? Number one priority, our Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, PTASK. I think everyone can probably dream about PTASK because we've talked about it so much. You were granted an extension, or I shouldn't say an extension, but you were allowed to the end of December to make sure you have those plans in place. I really encourage you to make sure you have them in place. While we didn't ask to see the plans, when we start doing our oversight reviews, the reviewers will be checking to see if you have that plan in your record. So just a heads up, please make sure you have that plan in there. There are serious consequences if that's not in your files. And TAM, of course, is still big. The Transit Asset Management, this is just inventory of the condition of your assets, helping you to be able to determine which assets need to be replaced or rehab earlier on. It's also setting targets, working with your MPO, and measuring progress again against those targets. So I just want to highlight, these are some things that are on the radar. They will probably be a focal point of our reviewers that will begin doing virtual oversight reviews in 2021. All right, this is probably more in Scott's lane, but I'm going to share what I know. The FAST Act expired September 30th, 2020. We do have an extension of it for 1 year. So we do have authorization to run our transit programs through September 30th of 2021. Within that extension, we do have about $3.2 billion in the mass transit account. There's $10.4 billion in the highway account. So it's really, I think, sustaining us pretty much at the same levels that we had in FY20. We have a continuing resolution through this Friday, December the 11th. Based on some information I was reading, it looks like Congress may extend it for 1 additional week through December 18th, while they continue to try to, negotiate and find agreement on a year-long FY21 appropriations bill. But if they can't reach agreement, we're hoping that they will at least pass another continuing resolution into late January. So we're very hopeful that we won't have a lapse in funding, that we can continue to provide the funding and stay on track with our programs. The other pressing legislation is a COVID-19 emergency relief bill, sort of a modified version of the CARES Act. Understand that would provide for $45 billion to various transportation industries, including about $15 billion for public transit. And that money could be used for capital improvements or the loss of revenue. We know there's been a huge loss of revenue across the transit industry, and paying for just additional expenses that you've incurred due to the virus. And so we're waiting to see if that will actually be passed. We hope that it will be, because I know it will do a lot of good services out there for our riding public. All right, so lastly, in preparation for FY21. So we're all looking at potentially the transition and administration changes of some of the leaders coming on board. So one could kind of ponder about that and figure out, what do I do? What's going to be the new initiatives? And just trying to read the crystal ball, which we can't do, right? So what I'm encouraging as a regional administrator, we are going to stand fast and steady and continue to advance our transit programs. That's where our attention is. We're going to partner with our grantees like we always have. We're going to obligate funds just like we always have. And we're going to work with you to get those projects built and completed and celebrate successes. So our attention for FY21 is just learning how to work smarter. Things are changing across the board, right, for all of us. And how can we work smarter together to be more efficient? So a couple of things that we're asking our grantees to do in the region is to start using more multi-sourced and consolidated applications. You say, what does that mean? Well, instead of coming for a grant for 5307 formula money for 1 year in a grant, and then come in again for another grant for the same program funds, just for a different year, why not combine those years? Put them all in one grant. That's less work on you, less reporting on you, less review and approvals on our side. And the same thing could occur with different pots of money, that you can combine those in a grant application. So you can mix it up a little bit. Instead of doing them separate, you can combine multiple program funds in one grant. If you're interested in that, regional staff is here to help walk you through that, to help you do that. I think you will find it's a huge benefit on the back end. We're also encouraging folks to draw down their money under the old grants. Go ahead and liquidate those funds, right? We're always asking for more money of Congress. It doesn't help our case if they look to see how much money we still have on the books, or how much money we haven't even obligated yet. So we want to make sure that we are obligating the funds, you guys are using the funds and drawing down those, so that we can continue to get more, or at least solicit for more funding. We want to start working on any lapsing grants, grants that are lapsing in FY21. Get those applications in now. That money is already on the books, it's available, TRAMS is open. We're here to get those grant applications started, so there is no question that whether or not we can cross the finish line before TRAM shuts down. If we start early enough, you're guaranteed to get your money and to save those lapsing dollars. The other thing, just a heads up, the try and reviews, we did defer. Those have been deferred by 1 year. So after 2023, we should be back on track with our 3-year cycle. So for example, if you had a review that was coming up in 2020, your review will probably start now in January 2021, right? And everything will be done virtual. We'll be collecting, reviewing information virtually. and interacting with our grantees virtually on that. So get prepared for those reviews. If you know you were scheduled for one in 2020, yours is coming up around the corner. Here's the things to look for that they're going to be looking for, those agency safety plans. Heads up, they may even take a peek at your CARES Act funds, how you've allocated out your CARES Act funds for what types of projects, looking to make sure they were eligible activities. If you have ER money, they will probably be taking a peek at the ER grants as well. So that is all I have on sort of program policy updates, our focus going in 21. I think our biggest thing is how can we work smarter? If you have ideas on how we can do things smarter, faster, easier, we're open to that. So we want to make sure that we're all taking good care of ourselves and we're still moving our programs along. So I want to share this, and I've been sharing this a couple of times, so people may have heard it before, but I thought it was so profound when I went to a virtual training course, and it was the Wharton School of Business that was offering it. It was called Leading Through Challenging Times. And I thought an awesome class for about a week. And we focused on, how as leaders do we be prepared for such things as a pandemic? How do we deal with the uncertainty of it? And so probably some of this will not be brand new to you, but hopefully it'll resonate, or it will bring some things back to the forefront that sometimes we can let go of when we're so busy in our day-to-day activities. So just give me a few moments. I want to share this with you. We talked about in the class, when you think of a great leader, or we think about great leaders throughout the world, right? Each of us probably could say what traits or characteristics really make that leader stand out. But take a look at when leaders are faced with uncertainty or uncharted territory, it's important to see what kind of traits and characteristics do you see then, right? When you're dealing with some huge stuff coming at you and you don't know quite how to deal with it, are those leaders still great? Many of them are. And as we were talking about it, the greatness that wells up from the inside out is kind of what takes us to that next level, right? We start to think a little differently. Our actions become even more profound to those that are working under us or with us, and we need to be cognizant of that. So we need to ask ourselves, when we're dealing with those uncertain times, are we deciding swiftly and decisively, or are we trying to drag it out to get to perfection? Sometimes you don't have the luxury of time. Do we adapt and adjust, right, in lieu of looking for the perfect answer? Are we honest and transparent? Are we willing to say, hey, I don't know what to do next, but let's brainstorm on it. Let's reach out to some other folks that may have experienced that. Do we control our emotions? Or are we hypersensitive? Are we forceful, more aggressive than normal? Are we intact with our emotions? And research shows that organizations that prevail the best during challenging times are the ones that find the right balance with technology and the talent of their resources. They're the ones that understand what it takes to be vigilant and not vulnerable during a crisis. They recognize that relationships grow slower in a virtual environment, and trust is a lot harder to build. And I know I've brought on some newer staff, and it is interesting trying to create a relationship with the brand new staff that I've never had the opportunity to sit in a room and talk with them. So being aware that you have to do a little bit more to help to start building that trust. And when we're dealing with the crisis, fear is okay, but only in the short term, right? As leaders, as great leaders, we need to be breathing hope. We need to stay in touch with ourselves and being observant of our own physical, our emotional, our relationship cues that tell us when to slow down, yet remain resilient. We have to be mindful. We got to practice mindfulness. It's critical during challenging times. So we must try to have a calm mind, a calm body, and allow ourselves and our teams to pause and expand time between our thoughts and our actions. We should never waste a crisis, rather identify opportunities for going forward in a manner that reveals your own authenticity as a leader. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share some of these takeaways that really resonated with me during that training course. So as I conclude, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your partnership with FTA. We have great partnerships with our transit agencies, our state DOTs, transit associations like CTAA and APTA, and we couldn't do it without you. So we greatly appreciate all that you do in transit every day in serving your communities. Keep up the great work in delivering safe and reliable public transportation. And I know that we're going to have another successful FY21 year. So thank you very much. And I'm hoping we have time for questions or interaction a little bit with folks.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Taylor. We do have a few comments or questions in the box. Now, just depending on time, we do have a Q&A session a little later in the agenda.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna be here all day, so that is absolutely fine. I'll be here with you guys till 12.
Okay, so we'll have a Q&A coming up towards the end, and I think Scott's taking some notes here, so we ought to have some questions coming up. Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we are going to have updates from our state delegates. We'll start off with John Autry in Alabama. Each state delegate update will be about 3 minutes, and then we will move down in the order as you see on the agenda. So John, take it away.
All right, good morning from sunny Huntsville, Alabama. Good to see everyone. In Alabama, as all over the country, we've had quite a year with COVID and the COVID restrictions. Approximately half of our 5311 funded agencies were shut down at some point in the year. Pleased to report right now all are back operating, and the CARES Act monies have made a big difference in that. Most of the senior centers across the state of Alabama are still closed. Most of the rural-based nursing homes have discontinued the scheduling of paratransit trips. We have urban systems in 5 cities, and ridership is between 50 and 70% on the high end of the pre-pandemic levels. That would be Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, and Tuscaloosa would be the 5 urban systems. We also have in Alabama 2 or 3 dual urban and rural systems. So the mask, physical distancing, limited bus seating, hourly disinfecting have pretty much become the standard operating procedure in the 5 urban cities. And on the rural side, starting last May, our state DOT contracts through the University of Alabama Huntsville Office of Public Transit to do statewide training. And they started back in May, traveling the whole state, as well as virtual training on best practices in PPE guidance and wheelchair securement while following CDC guidelines. So even though there were challenges, the training was modified and adapted to address the priority of the COVID virus this year. Very pleased to report, and I'm sure Dr. Taylor would be glad to hear, all of our PTASP, all of our safety plans in Alabama were certified back in July, and we've implemented the programs, and we have those documents ready for review. So we look forward to the reviews and the results of what those new the activities that are in the plans will produce, because the goal is obviously to make the service safer for citizens and customers and guests of our transit systems. 2 big announcements in Alabama. Baldwin County, which is our largest county in Alabama, just east of Mobile, is currently operating an on-demand pilot project with vendor VIA. There was also a similar pilot, not by the Transit Authority in Birmingham, but the city of Birmingham tried something similar. That's something that a lot of us are watching very close to see how that goes, and if that's a if a model for the future in the less populated, less dense areas. Huntsville, we were awarded the first of a two-part 5339 facilities grant to expand. Huntsville and North Alabama as a whole is one of the fastest growing regions in the Southeast, so we're very excited about that. And last, just a couple of challenges. Everyone's talking about once the vaccinations are out, will ridership return? And what kind of effect will the shift in working from home change service models? Probably not as much in Alabama, but we'll see since we're more rural than a lot of other states. Also, just before the pandemic, we were having discussions statewide on funding and governance models for consolidating rural and urbans into a more regional transit service that does more, serves more with available funds, particularly focused in the North Alabama area. So we've talked to some of the rural county agencies and what consolidation might look like. And with that, I guess we can go to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Lisa.
We'll flip over to Lisa.
Oh, yep. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Robert. I'm Lisa Bacot with the Florida Public Transportation Association. I am filling in for Karen Deagle today. She sends her best and wishes she could be here, but did ask me to step in to provide an update on transit activities in the state of Florida for her. I do work for the Florida Public Transportation Association. We're a statewide transit association representing both large and small systems in our state. Florida is lucky that we do have 30 urbanized fixed route transit systems, and we actually have a public transit system in all 67 counties. So even the most rural areas of our state has funding for individuals who are elderly, disabled, low income, or at risk. As with other states and as with what you just heard, public transit was suddenly thrust into a situation that we basically had not experienced before. Done a lot of emergency operations here, but not quite like this. So we immediately started altering our protocols for cleaning and for safety of both our passengers and employees. The transit office in the Florida Department of Transportation immediately did begin their emergency operations procedures. This was the first time that they held weekly calls with myself, with the Center for Urban Transportation Research, the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. So we all met weekly for several months to talk about what was happening and to share best practices and what was going on in each of the areas. My organization also created a special webpage that provided up-to-date information on what was happening at the local level, as well as information sharing, best practices, and all kinds of information and links, both to CTAA's page, APTA's page, FTA, the CDC. That webpage is still available today and is being updated. If you want to take a look, it's www.floridatransit.org/coronavirus. So, of course, all of our transit systems saw an immediate loss in ridership. The larger urbanized systems some of them dropped down to 10 to 20% of their pre-pandemic ridership levels. In rural areas, they also saw a large drop as well. However, all of our systems are starting to get our ridership back, not quite as high as before, but we're starting to see ridership come back. So on the positive side, I feel the pandemic did bring some innovation at a quicker pace to our systems than what would normally happen. So many of our systems, some of them still didn't have a way to handle contactless payment. So they were able to quickly adjust and purchase technology to get it installed to limit the way transactions are touched or held. We also had some of our systems do totally different innovative things, like in Jacksonville. They have an automated vehicle, and they use that automated vehicle to transport COVID-19 tests to the Mayo Clinic, back and forth. So an individual did not have to be assigned to run those tests back to the hospital to be processed. Also in St. Petersburg, they expanded their on-demand services with transportation network systems and local cabs to ensure essential riders still had a way to get to and from work because they had reduced their fixed route hours. So they quickly came up with a new program that essential workers could qualify for, and they could get trips to jobs if the fixed route system had stopped operating in their area. Also, driver barriers were again pushed forward and quickly, and we were able to use our CARES funding to install driver barriers on both our small and large systems to keep our drivers safe from respiratory droplets, but it also had the dual purpose of keeping our drivers and our operators safe from potential physical attacks. Some of you may know that last spring in 2019, our transit system in Tampa had a driver that was physically attacked and he was killed on his route. He was able to pull the bus over safely and all the passengers were fine, but unfortunately he passed away. That situation started an effort in Florida to try to get driver barriers on all of at least on our fixed route systems. So language did not pass our legislature. However, some of our systems with the CARES funding were able to install these barriers, or at least get the funding to install. So that sped up that process. Speaking of the CARES dollars, majority of our systems, that has just been a lifeline. I think all of our systems, it's been a lifeline. All of them were able to get it easily. I want to thank Dr. Taylor and her staff for making everything process so smoothly. They did a great job, and our systems are just forever thankful for those dollars. Hopefully we'll see a new federal package and possibly some more dollars coming through. As already has also been mentioned, we do expect long-term funding impacts at all levels, local, state, and federal. Obviously, the state of Florida relies very heavily on taxes such as gas and state taxes, and with the drop in tourism, we do anticipate we will see funding reductions for the next few years. Certainly service reductions, and of course, probably ridership reductions given the situation that has happened. So we're doing the best we can. Our legislature starts up again in the spring. We'll do our best to keep our funding at the current level here in the state of Florida. But I did want to give a special shout out again to Dr. Taylor and all her FTA staff for doing such a phenomenal job for us in the Southeast region. And also wanted to thank Scott and CTAA for your continued support of transit. Thanks.
Butch, you're up.
Sorry about that there, guys. Good morning, everyone. I hope things are going well out there with all of you guys. Here in Georgia, we're dealing with some of the same things everyone else is. Drastic drops in ridership, closing of services, and closing of the various types of communities and or services where we actually take people to and from the senior centers and such. It's been pretty devastating. Here in Athens alone, we've seen our university affiliated ridership drop by 97%, and our overall ridership has dropped by about 62% as of year-to-date numbers as of yesterday. It's university students are doing all online classes. So instead of doing, 6,500 university trips a day, we're seeing 100 maybe. It's just, it's devastating. And of course, across our system, we've seen reductions of services across the state. MARTA's operating about half the services they were operating before COVID-19 happened. I know that's happened in many of our rural areas. Many of our rural services have actually shut down or are doing very minimal services. I did talk with folks down in Brunswick, and actually they've seen a large jump in some of their rides because people are starting to get back out again and they're needing these trips to the doctors and stuff like that. But overall, we're facing the same challenges everyone else is across the state. Again, here in Athens, we've been operating fare free since March the 17th, and that's made a huge impact on our revenue stream. So not only with our university affiliated ridership, which is a large revenue stream, but overall ridership as well. And it's really hurt what's going on in the system. I know Gainesville has a new ride sharing program operating, so they're working with that. They're trying to do they're transitioning most of their fixed route to more of a demand response type dollar ride type services, and that's starting to pick back up there with Philippa and the folks up there in Gainesville. But it's just really tough, like it is everywhere with all of us. And I don't know about you guys. Many of our centers are shut down. Our transit center here in Athens is still shut down. We don't allow passengers inside the facilities. That's actually all of our Clark County facilities. So we actually had to bring in porta johns and things like that and set up outside because we were still operating buses. We're operating on reduced service level. We operate right now 16 buses hourly when usually we'd be operating 24 buses hourly and some 30-minute and 20-minute frequencies as well. So it's really different here. The university has also shut down their services to less than half of what they normally operate. On the good side, though, we've got a lot of things happening. You guys are going to hear about our bus stop improvement program here shortly, which has been really phenomenal. And we've been able to do a lot of work and not hamper our passengers' access and egress because the construction crews are still out there doing what needs to get done. We've seen several new buses. We've got some new hybrid electric buses that are on site that have came in the last 10 months or so. And we've also done a lot of upgrades to our passenger communication systems with as far as signage and interior announcements and electronic signs and things like that that are going on out there. So, again, everyone, I hope everyone's doing well out there and continue to do well, but keep doing what you're doing because it's challenging everywhere. So that's a quick one for Athens and Georgia.
All right, thank you, Butch. Pam.
Hello. Thank you so much, and I appreciate becoming a new CTAA delegate. This is something new for me. Our former delegate from Kentucky, he retired after 40 years at working in Louisville, and so we wish him well. Actually, I talked to him yesterday, and he was back at the office helping with the 5311 report. So there you go. So you can't get away. Kentucky's very much like everybody else in the other states. In the beginning, we had to learn a lot of new stuff. I mean, the shortages of PPE and sanitizer and cleaning products and experiencing low ridership on top of that. I mean, I kind of learned an interesting thing for myself. That a funny story is that we moved into a new building and we had these dispensers in our building that had cleaning supplies in them. And so to be able to get these new cleaning supplies, I had to order up all of these products. And so when the products came in the first time, they kept rolling in and rolling in and rolling in. And I'm like, gee, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Well, it was really surprising when you could not find Lysol products that we were able to take the disinfect that we had that we're using in the building and able to since it was a diluted product, put it into spray bottles. So we were able to give it out to all the drivers to clean the buses. So it's kind of the new things that we had to do for us all to pull together. So from that, from making hand sanitizer from pure grain alcohol and aloe and putting up shower curtains as barricades. Those were all the things that we had to learn how to do. In Kentucky, by having local liquor distilleries here, they began producing hand sanitizer, which was really, really great for us across the state of Kentucky to be able to start getting that in because we were just in short supply from everybody that we ever tried to contact. The blue surgical masks that we were trying to find, those were, the first ones I tried to buy were $2.50 a piece. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But now the cost has gotten really down since more people are producing it. So it's made life a whole lot easier. We were able to work with a DB distributor in here in Lexington for the state of Kentucky, and she was able to get us some N95 masks and some gowns because under our Medicaid program, a lot of other is that we're having still take COVID-19 positive people to life-sustaining appointments like chemo and dialysis, so for our drivers to have gloves and goggles and face shields for this transportation. So once that transportation is completed, then, we've got to clean down the buses for after that trip. So, because that's the thing about people forget is if you're not sick enough to be in the hospital and you're in a nursing home or you're at home, you still have to have these life sustaining treatments. So the drivers have had to step up, and, you know, they're a blessing out there. I think we all kind of forget about what hard work and everything, that they are one of the first line responders out there, just like everybody else in the hospitals and everything, because they're having to deal with people a lot of times that they don't even know that are. Another thing that was really unique, a few years ago at a CTAA conference, there was a lady there and she was selling this product. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. It was where you put the cleaning machine into the bus and you would spray it down. So I bought a couple of them, and some other people, because we saw her at the CTAA conference, we bought them. And I thought, well, this is nice. And I even tried to get with some of my drivers and make them think it killed bed bugs, but it really didn't. But anyway, that was something there. But this was a great product because what happened? So we just spray it, turn it on, shut up the bus, and it sanitizes. So the buses come into the garages, and we can set those off and do it. Then we were able later on to find some of those handheld ones that they've been using in schools and places like that, where you just carry them over your shoulder. Then you can go into the buses and clean it down and wipe it down. So those were a blessing for us out here too. Still, many of the agencies were still experiencing like 40% ridership numbers. That's hurt many agencies out there. With the upswing, and some of them got up to 50 and 60, some areas 70, but it's still really hard, because a lot of programs, like people are keeping people in nursing homes, because our nursing home COVID cases are just really high in Kentucky. I'm sure other people experience it, but it's really high. And so the only people that are really leaving nursing homes are the ones that are just going to dialysis or chemo or something like that. The people that are going to support for community living programs and adult days, those programs are shut down. So these individuals are not going out, so they're not using the transportation, where these people are using it 5 times a week, 2 times a day. And so that really brings down your numbers. Then with a lot of businesses shut down and working from home, those numbers. So those are the same things that everybody else I know is experiencing too out there. Other issues that we're experiencing is needing more vehicles on the roads because of needing to social distance on the vehicles. In our non-emergency medical program, we're keeping people 6 feet apart on the vehicles. So in a 12 and 2 bus, you're really pushing it to get 3 ambulatories and 1 wheelchair on there. So to try to keep them socially distanced. So you're talking about 3 to 4 people on a 14-passenger vehicle. So that can cause a lot of, with increase in needing vehicles, and also already having a decrease in shortage of drivers, and now having the problem of being able to replace these drivers. And I know that is something, I maybe hope it's not for everybody, but it is here for us in Kentucky, trying to find replacement drivers. I mean, you're trying to bring somebody on and you're trying to hire them and make sure that they don't have a criminal background, they're not doing drugs. And then you bring them on here and then say, hey, I'm going to put you out there with COVID positive people. So that's not making the issue of trying to find drivers and replacement drivers. I mean, so we're going to be at a high shortage when the pandemic starts to decrease and the vaccines come on. So everybody's going to be trying to get there and get going to get their businesses back up with their driver population. The one thing that for some of our systems, one of our larger systems and some of the others, is that on a local basis where they were receiving local occupational taxes from their local government, because people are not going to work and people have laid off people, and there's not the highest number, so the occupational tax is lower. So that means that the amount of reimbursement to the transit system is going to be lower because of the occupational tax is not there. A lot of smaller systems and even a few urban areas receive local government funding from their metro governments or their judge executives, and people, they're having issues with their tax bases. So when people start back up in the new fiscal year trying to get funding for that, everybody's going to be on the short end of that, trying to get, because everybody's going to be wanting money. So they're in the fear of worrying about their local match money that's coming from their local areas and not being able to reimburse that. But you have to say one thing: Kentucky public transit agencies have been successful and continue to provide transit services statewide during the pandemic, following the CDC, the governor, and FDA recommendations. Like everybody's wearing masks and social distance, clean the vehicle, and just trying to stay open statewide through the pandemic. We had very few agencies that closed down during the pandemic. Under a non-emergency medical program, we had to operate, so all our agencies were always going for that. And very few agencies actually closed down but a few days. So that was very, very good that people were trying. Even with small amounts of numbers, they were still out there working. The CARES money was very appreciative asset to the continuation of operation in the Kentucky systems. So far, FTA has awarded $31 million out of the $60.5 million apportionments to Kentucky for 5311 funds, and we have over $12 million in capital projects. KYTC is in the process of securing the final $17 million, and the 5307 agencies have received over $74 million in CARES funding. So that's keeping their operations going, because when they don't have most of them are not charging fares, so that increase of money is not coming in either. So we'll talk about a few good things. One bit of information, exciting news to Kentucky, is Vicki Bourne, who had been with the Transportation Cabinet for over 40 years, retired for 2 years and came back. So I'm sure Dr. Taylor has already had conversations with Vicki, but we're very, very excited to have Vicki back. The Kentucky Public Transit Association has always had a great working relationship with their partners at the KYTC and FTA. And that's one thing, like I said, and even Dr. Taylor's been at our conferences, we said the type of relationship that the Public Transit Association and the cabinet have together is a great working relationship, and we've had it for years. So that keeps us all going. So we're really proud of that. And we want to thank each of these partners for all that they've done for us and all the assistance. We've had a couple new projects that we started in Kentucky that we're proud of. On August 1st, the Kentucky Transit Agencies partnered with the Kentucky Department of Transportation with the Department of Corrections to start a new pilot program to transport those people on parole or probation to various appointments, such as job interviews, probation meetings, and medical appointments, substance abuse programs, with the goal to lower the rates across the state of repeated crimes. So if these individuals, were trying to get them out of jail and put them back out here into the workforce, but if they don't have the opportunity to try to get to jobs and medical appointments and their substance abuse, they'll just fall back into the system and go right back into it. But that's one thing that we're really been proud of, to try to help that to decrease the individuals in jail. Also in August, the transit agencies launched a new initiative via partnership with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and the Department for Aging and Independent Living to take people with disabilities to COVID-19 testing sites. This funding was made available by the CARES Act through Centers for Independent Living and local aging and disability resource centers. This service is for those individuals that fall through and they're not qualified for Medicaid, but they're still needing services. So the Aging and Independent Living stepped up to use some of their CARES money to pay the transit agencies to make sure that these individuals could get to COVID testing. Like I said, all of us are in the same situation. I think that we've all learned a lot. And I think that when you're putting all your plans together in a pandemic, I think that those pages will certainly have increased after this pandemic for things that you would never thought of and think that you would need. Your pages are now larger. So thank you so much for taking my time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pam. Let's move on to Sabrina.
I don't know that she's with us, Robert.
Okay, then we'll move on down to David.
Great, Robert. Thank you very much. And let me first thank Dr. Taylor and Scott for your outstanding leadership and support of North Carolina. I'll go pretty quickly. The pandemic hit North Carolina in March. And quickly thereafter, we began to partner with NCDOT for the creation of an initiative called North Carolina Transit Cares. where we brought together all of our transit systems across North Carolina for a conversation with NCDOT. There were 3 virtual meetings that occurred where we began to sort of tackle the challenges of not only COVID, but sort of what we hope to be post-COVID. Out of that, there were 4 main challenges. 1, how can we keep passengers and operators safe? 2, how can we offset ridership declines due to COVID-19? 3, how can we restore revenues and funding loss as a result of COVID-19? And 4, how can we move to new service patterns as needs evolve? I found that as the leader of our association to be a very helpful ongoing conversation with NCDOT. And we're now moving to the implementation phase of that work. NCDOT asked us to identify leaders across the state to work in basically 3 work groups, 1 in the area of funding, 1 in the area of safety and health, and 1 in the area of technology. So those work groups have been identified. Our system members have been selected, a cross-section of both established leaders and then sort of new emerging leaders within our association. And I think that that work is going to prove to be very effective. As part of the pandemic, we were greatly appreciative of the CARES Act that came to North Carolina. The challenge with the CARES Act is the CARES Act doesn't fund every unique opportunity in North Carolina, particularly with the elderly and disabled. And then compounding that, the North Carolina legislature felt like because of the CARES Act, that would be sufficient for a year. And so they zeroed out 2 of the state transit programs, 1 on the rural side and 1 on the urban side. That was a $50 million decision. And the legislature will be coming back on January the 13th for their long session. And our association will have, it's not surprising probably to any of y'all, that will be our lead priority for restoration of that $50 million. So I would just encourage you as your legislatures go back that the CARES Act, while helpful, is not the goose that laid the golden egg and does not supplant the state transit programs. Shifting away quickly from COVID, the other 2 things that we're actively involved in North Carolina is we're deeply involved in the conversation with managed care. There's an implementation date in the state for that program of July 1 of 21. So we're in deep conversations with all of the partners involved in that initiative. Our systems are involved in contract negotiations with the brokers. And Scott and his team at CTAA have been absolutely tremendous in supporting the work that we're doing. And for Scott and Dr. Taylor, we hope to get y'all back together as a dynamic duo on April the 13th. We are working on our upcoming conference, more details about what that will look like, but we will certainly be putting together a program of work. Thank you all for your leadership across the country, and it's a pleasure to be with you today.
All right, thank you, David. All right, John.
Well, top of the morning, everybody. John Ando here in South Carolina. South Carolina has been very busy. Similar to the other states, the pandemic has taken toll on the transit operators here. However, with the guidance of South Carolina Department of Transportation's Office of Public Transit, we've been able to collaborate, share ideas, and work together to get through this pandemic. The CARES Act funding has been distributed to all the transit operators, whether they're urban, small urban, or rural, whether as us as direct recipients or through SCDOT. And the operators are using them to do a multitude of different things, including PPE, service expansion, purchasing assets, and doing things to modernize their transit systems. Just some quick highlights here in South Carolina. We have 27 transit systems serving 40 of the 46 counties. And we've been successful in getting a multitude of grants to help us in continuing to operate our services. For some example, Greenville, Charleston, and Clemson have received NOLO grants to purchase electric buses. The Comet has received the human trafficking grant to combat human trafficking, and an ICAM grant to combat trying to transport people to healthcare opportunities. The CARES Act funding will be helping some transit agencies add additional services, such as services being added by the CoStar TA, PDRTA, Greenlink, Santee Watery, as well as the Comet. Several transit operators are also restudying their transit systems to see how they could be more productive in their communities. Sparta, Greenlink, and Comet are those systems that have started to do that. There's also expansion activities such as the BCD COG in the Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester area, which is studying bus rapid transit and looking to implement and pursue the capital improvement grant program. Rockville, the city of Rock Hill started a transit system last July, and they're all electric, and they're also fare free. So one of the first in South Carolina, in addition to Clemson, which is also fare free. Tri-County Link, which is the rural transit operator in Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston counties, recently consolidated under the BCD COGS management to show more regionalism in that area, and it could be the catalyst for future regionalism in other counties in South Carolina. I'm happy to say that all the safety plans in South Carolina have been completed with the help of SCDOT, and we were able to meet that deadline in July, well in advance of the December extension. And then lastly, SCDOT is holding bi-weekly calls with the grantees just to keep us on the same page with how we can fight this pandemic and be effective in our communities, as well as discussing how we can spend on the CARES funding and giving us any appropriate guidance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. In just a moment, we'll begin our Transit Innovations panel. I did want to give a quick minute to our two national directors, Ann August and Joanne, if they had any information or anything they wanted to let the membership know. So we'll start real quickly with Ann August.
Good morning. I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve on the CTAA board again. Of course, some of you that have been around for a while know that I've been around for a while as well. Just wanted to thank all the transit systems in the Southeast region, mainly because of the fact that we all know that we're on the front lines every day trying to ensure that services are put on the street. But a lot of times we're always forgotten. But this time I'm glad that the CARES Act funds allowed for these systems to be able to use the money for operations and any other things that were necessary during this pandemic. So I'm not going to hold you long. I just wanted to thank everyone. And of course, Dr. Taylor, for your great help and assistance over the years in all the areas that I've worked in. And then of course, you're continuing to do the same thing. So I appreciate you and your team. And it seems like you're constantly getting a new team every time I talk to you. So continue to grow and develop your teams as they move on to other areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joanne?
Yes, I'll ditto what Ann just said, but I'm in awe and I'm not surprised at all what a great region we have, and so proud still of Dr. Yvette Taylor for her leadership. It was a pleasure to work with her all these years, and I hope she'll be around 15 more years. And I'm just so proud of all the different states of what they've done, especially all the innovative ideas that you created during this terrible pandemic. So that's just keep the work up, and I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, and I hope we have a better year next year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So next, we're going to move on to our Transit Innovations panel. We've got Butch McDuffie and John Ando will be presenting. We'll go in order of the agenda. And Butch will be talking to us about bus stops improvements and art shelters. So Butch, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and great reports, everybody. Let me get this, if I can share this screen so you guys can see what we got going on here. And my presentation up and going. And okay, I assume everybody can see that, right? Got some nods going on. Okay, well, we've got a great program here in Athens, and we got to say, thanks to Dr. Taylor and her staff and the Georgia DOT folks and stuff for helping us put this program together. We're going to talk about the funding a little later in this presentation, but we've really got some innovative and cool art shelters here in Athens, and a lot of time and thought has gone into this program. So when this program presentation is completed, I'm sure our CTAA staff will be glad to share this as well. And if you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll provide whatever information I can to any of you on how we put this program together. So with that, first screens are just some of the slides to walk through here. But for those of you that don't know about Athens, we're a very traditional small urban fixed route program. We run about 20 routes during our regular schedules, 10 at nights and weekends. And when University of Georgia is not in session, we run about 18 routes that happen. We do those. We have two very distinctly different service levels. When we have our 37,000 college kids at the University of Georgia, between the months, the second week of August and the first week of May every year, we run a lot of extra service, about 30% extra service. And then during the summertime and during UGA breaks, we reduce those. You can see here, we're about 44 square miles, 120,000 people. Last year, we did about 1.5 million trips with 32 heavy duty fixed route buses. What we've done, this is a 20-year program we've been working on. It started with some sales tax dollars. Here in Georgia, we have something called special purpose local option sales tax. And our citizens vote on these. Let me back up one more. We've done 50 digital wayfinding digital maps and customer information schedules that are out there at different locations. We've done 150 plus shelters in various types and designs, and we have some standardized shelters as well. 140 or 139 benches across the community. We use semi-seats, where the 2-seater benches instead of a 6-foot long wooden bench, which are very helpful in some cases. We've done almost 500 improved concrete pads. Every bus stop we've got in the community has a concrete pad that's at least a minimum ADA accessible 5x8 concrete pad. And of course, we have every single one of our bus stops has a site-specific sign that tells you the routes that are actually served at that location, and has information on the bus stop IDs and things like that, so you can get it from our app called MyStop, which is an Avail product. So this is all the things we've done. And this, like I said, this has been going on for over 20 years. We've been working on this program. The funding, I said already, special purpose local option sales tax. Our citizens have voted 3 times over the years to provide funding for these various programs. And these are the different referendums that we've had, 2005, 2005, and 2011. Our total SPLOST funding was over $4 million, and about $3 million worth of state and federal dollars. And that's what we've used to do all these improvements and stuff. Costs us about $75,000 a year to maintain this program. That's basically our folks that go out and clean and service the bus stops and bus shelters. We have to dump our own trash cans. As a matter of fact, our friends at the federal level and state level allowed us to buy a trash truck. So we bought a garbage truck with a federal grant to maintain our services and stuff. So we do require, one of our biggest issues is permitting, getting these things done and getting them built. And you got a lot of stuff going on. This is our timeline. We really started in November of 2000, put together the program, came up with a methodology, and started doing our first standardized improvements, which are just a standard bus shelter and with a 5x8 concrete pad or various sizes. You'll see those just in a moment. We started working with the art program. We did a You, Me, and the Bus program, where we reached out to the community, did a nationwide search and contest to have people put in designs to come up with these various art shelters that we have. Very detailed designs, very elaborate. Honestly, some of these are the imagination was well used. Working with artists, I have to say, is interesting and challenging. So you have to know a lot about art and public art and intellectual, I guess, properties and things like that when it comes to art. We did our first round in 2007, a second round in 2010. And of course, we had our funding renewed in 2011, and we've been steady putting bus stops and bus shelters in ever since that time frame. And then 2018, we had a T-SPOS, which is Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. And I had another round of projects then, and we've been installing art shelter. We did another 40 or so shelters in the last 2.5 years. Planning. If you're planning when he goes to a program like this, it's very detailed. I'll be happy to share that information with you, but you got to look at everything. You got to look at your routes, your points of origins, your destinations, your tenant and property owner buy-in, your community buy-in, what art is assumed to be in some places. Some people, people look at art in different manners. So, some of these shelters, folks didn't like them when they first came out, and then we had to work with that. The other thing that we do is we actually work with our developers. And one of the things that we do in Athens is we require a developer to submit their plans through the planning process when they're getting their permits, just like they're getting sewer or fire inspections and things like that. They get reviewed for transit options as well. And if the development looks like it has a propensity to have a high transit ridership, we require them to put in bus stop and bus stop amenities. We even put them into future amenities as easements. So when the property, we may not have transit service there today, but 5 years from now, when that property is sold 5 different times, we have an easement out front that says we get to put a bus stop here when that time comes, and very beneficial, just like some type of utility easement or whatever. So it's planning, and for doing something like this is a huge issue. Prioritization. We went through these processes, and we used the TCRP report 19 to look at those bus stop standards. If you're not using TCRP, go out there and look at it. There's tons of things in TCRP that will help you all. ADA, community demographics, all those type of things go on that you have to look at when you're putting these shelters in. We have two different criteria. When we started in 2005, we did it basically by boardings and alightings on a daily basis by average. And that's why our folks got, if you had 10 or more, you got improved surface, trash can, and your route information. If you had 20 or more, you got a shelter or maybe an art shelter, and anything kind of in between. That changed as our ridership demographics changed and our funding became a little more available. We revised that in 2018 and changed our boarding levels and looked at some more specifics, as you can see in this slide, on how we get those amenities out there to our various ridership and locations around the community. Design standards, very important for your design standards. What we're looking at here is the different types of standards we used for our bus shelter footprints, or sorry, I should say our bus stop amenity footprint, where basically here you see you had a level 3.1, 1.1. That's your standard 5x8 concrete pad with a trash can and a signpost. And that's what you got. We have a level 2, a level 1.2 or 1.3 or 1.4, which might have it in front of the sidewalk, behind the sidewalk, with existing sidewalk nearby or something like that. Level 2, we showed here, here's the semi-seat. It's shown behind the existing sidewalk and with a beauty strip or a grass strip between the sidewalk and the back of the curb face. These are things that have to be thought about. We talked about earlier, I said we use the semi-seat. We use semi-seat 2-seater bench because we found out, and actually there's a TCRP report out there that show this. I forget the number of it right now, but they've done a study on people that ride public transportation. And if you have a 6-foot bus bench out there and you're not in the same family unit, caveat that, you'll have a person sitting on one end, a person sitting on the other, and the third person standing there leaning against the signpost. Because as Americans, we won't set 3 people abreast. that's changed considerably now because we have, COVID in our world today. But that's why we went with the semi seats. It's also less intrusive to the property owner as well. And then our third improvement that we're showing here is our standard footprint for the bus stop, which are for the shelter, which has the shelter, the bench, the trash can, and the full access concrete pad between the curb face and back, whether it was a sidewalk in front or behind or whatever. We have different designs for these, and we're happy to share these as well. But very important when it comes to these. And so here's a picture of the various different designs just for the level ones. And when you give this to a contractor, it's a huge difference because you don't know if you go through your whole community and you say we're going to do 15 level ones, or this is level 2, I'm sorry, but you can see where the sidewalk is, where it's behind it, where it's not, and where there's no sidewalk. One of the things that we do also is if there is a sidewalk, we say within a reasonable distance, generally 50 to 100 feet away, we will connect that sidewalk to make that bus stop fully accessible for ADA purposes. Program goals: easily identifiable, accessible, improves the experience of the rider. We went by that design criteria. We tried to make sure we prioritize road safety, visibility. Were they near crosswalks? Were they well lit? Actually, one of the things I haven't mentioned yet is we've actually put solar lighting at just about every single bus stop we have out there right now. And that is our goal, to eventually have solar lighting at all of our stops. You got to modify them for your community setting. Like I mentioned earlier, if a developer comes in and they want to build or we tell them they have to build a bus stop in front of their location, we allow them to come up with a design that matches the aesthetics of their building and build that right into the front. So it's not a standardized green bus shelter like you might see here on the bottom of the left-hand picture here. ADA accessibility, space maximized, and future developments. Of course, we require easements for future services. And the picture on the lower right side of your screen, that's one of our e-ink readers. That's a digital sign that's available out there in the market. I know there's more than just this company, but these are the ones that we're putting out at locations all over the community, and persons can track their bus in real time when they're using those readers. Partnerships, like I said earlier, Transportation and Public Works, Planning Department, SPLOS programs. We have a SPLOS Citizens Advisory Committee, our citizens, the Athens Area Arts Council and Cultural Affairs Commission, the private developers, and Georgia Department of Transportation. And we have left off FTA. I apologize, Dr. Taylor. But yeah, we got to have partnerships to make this kind of stuff happen. You got to work with your community. Stated goal, make sure that our riders in the county have the bus shelters that they're available, and they have functional art. This art shelters are fabulous. I've got to tell you guys, if you ever get a chance to come to Athens, I'd be happy to show you around. Some of these are all specifically designed, like our Morton Theater building. It reflects a historic Black theater that's in our community. The one in the center here reflects the old trolley system. This is a laser cut piece of sheet metal, or I should say plate metal, that reflects the old trolleys that used to be in Athens, 125 years ago or so. And then the other is a very unique design shelter that one of our artists came up with. Our artists that we did this in 3 different phases. We did national submissions that came from all over the country. These shelters have to fit into the standardized footprint of one of our general bus shelters. So if it's like the green bus shelter, the typical bus shelter you might see out there or buy from a company, these things have to actually fit in that footprint. So it's very specific. Canopies had to be identified for size and seating for at least 3 people and a wheelchair position. A citizens committee, along with some of our transit riders and some of our transit staff, we went through, and actually some of our elected officials sat on the committee that reviewed all these art shelter designs. When the artist won that design, they got a $3,000 commission for winning that design. The rest of the budget basically became what it was to the cost of providing a standardized bus shelter. Now, you may think that sounds cheap, but it's really not. When you go with the topography of a site, we do a site drawing. You've got your 5x8, your concrete pad. your footprint, all the metal, everything like that. A bus shelter with all amenities can cost upwards of $20,000 to $25,000, especially if you have to build like a knee wall or something behind it for the landscaping that goes behind it. But these are some of the other designs that we have out there in the community. But overall, they're generally, the construction of the shelter is about the cost of a standardized bus shelter. And in some cases, we actually had some of our artists have to go out and raise some funds to actually complete the design, complete the construction, because they were a little more elaborate. You, Me, and the Bus, that was 2005 to 2007. It was a transportation related theme we had with there. It conveyed movement and people. We had our 2008 to 2010, which honored the musical heritage of Athens and everything that's around. We had the B-52s. This is unofficially and not in uncopyrighted, the Love Shack, and the one with the treble clef, and then our recycled school bus. These are really cool shelters that we have out there. Some of the others we did in 2018, we had the 13 unique art shelters, which looks the one that we have the design, which there's actually a leaf designed into the back of the blue one with the galvanized metal here. Is what that's supposed to relay. And I'm sorry, I forget the name. Every one of these has a name and artist information and stuff about it. And then we did our 20 laser cut designs that were done by artists and selected by our community as well. And these are all over the community as well. Challenges: land acquisition, citizen buy-in, sidewalk connectivity, budgets, of course, changes in ridership. If you build a shelter out in front of a factory and the factory closes, you lose all your ridership. You got a beautiful shelter setting up front. So you got to think about those things. And of course, interdepartmental communication, not only between our local departments, but our state and federals, to make sure that this people understand what's going on when you actually start building these things. Lessons learned: longevity of materials. Make sure everything that you spec out for this, and we got a very good spec for this, requires very minimal maintenance, and it will last a very long time. I didn't mention, but every one of these constructed shelters has an engineer stamp on them. It has to have wind loads and snow loads and those type of ratings that says it's truly a structure and will provide protection. Get your stakeholders and community leaders involved. Plan, and plan for uniform improvements at a later date. Just like all the concrete pads, they're all the same. So we have to change something. Communicate with everyone, and of course, remember there is intellectual property rights when it comes to art, and it's just you learn a lot about artist law when you do something like this. And with that, I hope it was good, and I'll be happy to take questions. Or Robert, we take questions later, whatever you think.
But we had one question. Steve over in Virginia wanted my chat box moved.
Okay, yeah.
He wanted to get a quick answer on what the approval process is in Georgia for customized versus standard shelters. He says in Virginia the engineering design is a little challenging.
Okay, well, we work through Georgia Department of Transportation, and basically we permit corridors for bus shelters and bus stops, and we give them our basic design criteria. And we didn't really get a lot of pushback or any specific information on the standardized versus the customized or the art shelters. They basically have the engineering design drawings and all the appropriate materials and things like that that go into a standardized bus shelter. So we didn't really have a lot of difference in that aspect. What we did though, locally, is we selected various types of off-the-shelf standardized shelters. They went through our citizens review process. Our citizens selected some designs. For those, we use the green shelter we use as a LACOR product, and then that was approved through our mayor and commission. And then all the individual art shelters, of course, were selected by the citizens as well. But the bottom line, there really wasn't a big difference between the art shelter or the standard shelter, but all of them do have GDOT permits if they're on the GDOT right away.
All right, thank you, Butch. If there's any other questions for Butch, please put them in the chat. And if we run out of time today, we'll promise to chase them down for you. Thanks again, Butch. All right,
Thank
next
you all.
we've got John Ando coming up to talk to us about mobility innovations. John.
Hello again. Let me get my screen set up. Can everybody see this presentation okay?
We can, John.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, I'm John Ando, I'm the Executive Director here at the Comet, and I'm going to talk to you about some of our mobility innovations we've done in the past couple of years here. A little bit about us. We are the Central Midlands Regional Transit Authority. We're one of the newest transit operators in the Southeast. We were created in 2000, officially took over transit from the South Carolina Electric and Gas Company in 2002. And we're a regional transportation authority that was created by Richland County, Lexington County, City of Forest Acres, and City of Columbia. And our boundaries, if we were to expand, we can also go into Newberry and Fairfield counties. We have similar boundaries as our local council of governments. The Comet system is what we have branded our transit system, consists of 30 fixed routes, 4 soda cap connector routes in downtown Columbia, Casey, and West Columbia, 5 reflex deviated fixed route services in our rural areas, 12 University of South Carolina transit routes, a van pool program, 8 bike share stations, Uber Lyft subsidy program, and a DART ADA paratransit program. We have 83 buses, trolleys, and vans. In fiscal year 2019, we carried about 2.8 million passenger trips. Because of the pandemic, in fiscal year 2020, we carried about 2.4 million passenger trips. We're the second largest transit operator in the county, in the state after CARTA. We also have a lot of amenities on our buses to make it attractive, to get people to want to take advantage of transit. Free Wi-Fi, automatic vehicle locator that can be accessed through an app, SMS, or telephone. We have a Comet Card smart card that can be used on buses and Blue Bike, security cameras, cell phone chargers, departure boards to tell people when buses are departing from Comet Central or at some of our bus stops throughout the service area. And the map on the right gives you an idea of how our service is spread out between Richland and Lexington counties. First innovation I want to talk about is the Comet on the Go. We implemented this program to tackle 2 challenges that we were facing at the Comet. One, nighttime transportation was very costly to us, but was needed. And then getting people to the grocery stores due to the high levels of food deserts that we have in the Columbia metropolitan area. We started the program in December of 2018. We allow for a $5 maximum subsidy. However, we're increasing that to $8 in January of 2021. In order to ensure that everybody has access to Comet on the Go, we have a wheelchair accessible vehicle program, which we call WAVE, where we have our DART service that will pick up people who are in mobility devices, who do not have a smartphone, or who do not have access to a credit card. And will provide the same level of service that Uber and Lyft would provide. We also have the ability for the unbanked to access Comet on the Go by merely getting a gift card with a Visa or MasterCard logo and putting $10, $20 on that gift card. And we encourage riders to do that. And we have riders that have done that. We started off with a $150,000 budget, but we're increasing that to $300,000 due to the subsidy increase. So within the Comet to the Go, we have Comet at night. It is from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. It's geofenced in the Lyft and Uber apps, and you can go anywhere in our service area, wherever there's Comet fixed route. We're budgeting that at $75,000, and the service replaced 12 bus routes that cost $335,000 to operate with 1.5 passengers or less on average. How we make sure that transit users are taking advantage of this promotion, we put codes on the buses, and users can get the codes on a monthly basis. The code changes. And in order to get access to the code, you just merely have to ride a Comet bus. And we treat this as an extension of the Comet transit system. So we have people who work retail jobs. Walmart closes at 10 o'clock and the last bus may have left by 8 o'clock. So we have those that would take advantage from Walmart to go directly to home. It's also a safety measure. So when people want to get to their homes, they don't necessarily have to get off a bus and walk down a dark street. They can count on a Lyft, Uber, or Wave vehicle to get them directly to their door. We even have people that use this program to go to jobs at night, such as at Amazon or Prisma Health or Lexington Medical Center. So it allows us to basically have transit close to 24 hours a day. Comment to the Market is one of a unique program where we want to help people get to grocery stores to access fresh food, such as fresh meats and produce, to help create a healthy environment for the residents of Richland and Lexington counties. A lot of grocery stores have closed in the urban cores of the city of Columbia and have relocated to the suburban cores. So we've been left with a lot of convenience stores or markets that don't necessarily have those fresh items that people desire. So by creating Comment to the Market, we will allow a user to use Lyft, Uber, or a Wave vehicle to get to whichever grocery store they choose within our service area. We have geo-fenced every grocery store with fresh produce and meats in Richland and Lexington counties in both the Lyft and Uber apps. A person can use the program 2 times a week, and they can access it from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is the general hours of most of the grocery stores in our service area. And it's basically simple. We advertise the code universally. We also target market this program to people who are in the significant food desert areas so that they can take advantage of it. And each month after month, the program continues to grow in ridership. This gives you an idea of the food deserts in the Columbia metropolitan area. Those areas in red is where those food deserts are. And then the area in purple shows the boundaries of the Comet on the Go service area for both the nighttime program and the grocery stores. So basically we have a large portion of Richland and Lexington counties covered with this program. And how we fund this program is we are funding this with our local sales tax revenues. And we also are, we've worked with Lyft and Uber to ensure that these programs meets the definition of public transportation so that it can be reported in the National Transit Database. And how we do that is through Lyft, users would select Lyft Shared, which would pool people together so that you have that shared ride experience, or in the Uber's case, Uber Pool. During the pandemic, those programs have been suspended, but once we get back into a better state, those programs will be reinstituted. And we worked with FTA and NTD just to ensure that during the suspension, we could still continue to count these passenger trips. Blue Bike is another one of our mobility options of how we want to connect Comet riders to their final destination if a Comet bus can't connect them to where they need to go. We are funding the Blue Bike program with FTA funds, but only the bike stations, because presently you can't fund bicycles with FTA dollars. And we're treating those as associate transit enhancements. Within the Blue Bike system, there are 18 stations. The Comet has funded and owns 8 of those stations. It's primarily in the downtown Columbia area. Another way of how we integrate Blue Bike into the Comet system, that free bikes for Comet riders. A Comet rider just simply needs to get a code from the bus operator, put that code in at a Blue Bike kiosk or in the Blue Bike app, and they can get unlimited 45-minute sessions for the day. And most recently, we just launched the linking of the Comet card, smart card, to the kiosks so that users can use their smart card to also rent a bike without the need of having to enter in a code. Blue Cross Blue Shield is our title sponsor for the program, and we contract out the operations in partnership with the City of Columbia to operate and maintain the system. And this gives you an idea of where the 18 blue bike stations are throughout downtown Columbia. Another mobility initiative that we launched is the Comet Van Pool. This is our way of being able to connect people to major employment sites when it doesn't necessarily make sense to run a large bus. We have a contract with Enterprise Holdings, which is the nation's largest van pool contractor. We provide a $500 subsidy per month for groups that are formed as long as the vans originate or end in Richland or Lexington counties. We started the program off with 1 van 2 years ago. We're now at 14 vans, and the program continues to grow with multiple employers taking advantage of it. We're using 5307 JARC funding to fund this program. It's another way that we've been able to generate additional ridership and also create opportunities of moving people without necessarily having to use traditional bus services to move people. We are working with the City of Columbia to implement micromobility in a pilot area in the downtown Columbia boundary area. And this micromobility pilot would basically allow for scooters, dockless scooters, to operate. There has been requests in the community for such a program, and the city would like to develop an ordinance that is safe and effective to make sure that the program is successful. And we've been looking at other model jurisdictions across the country on how to successfully design that ordinance. Once that ordinance is developed, there are some vendors that are interested in wanting to come to Columbia to pilot scooters in our area. And with discussions with those vendors, we envision that we'll have a connectivity to the transit system by allowing Comet users to have free access to those scooters by merely, again, similar with Blue Bike, entering in a code, and the scooters will be used as the first mile, last mile connection to connect people between bus stops and where that ultimate destination of the user. We're hoping that once the pilot period has ended and it's determined successful, that the program could be expanded in a much larger area. As a way to provide effective transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities that may not be allowed to access the DART ADA paratransit system, this month we're launching a program called V-Trip, which is our volunteer transportation program, and pickup program, or PUP, which is going to be partnering with taxi cabs, Uber, and Lyft. Basically, it's available in the Columbia urbanized area for seniors 65 years and older or persons with disabilities. We're going to reimburse people who are using V-Trip at 57.5 cents per mile, up to 100 miles each month, for whatever trip purpose that an eligible user would like to use it for. A PUP, we would provide a $50 subsidy monthly for use on a taxi, Lyft, or Uber. And the goal of these two programs is, one, to make sure seniors and persons with disabilities have access to quality of life opportunities in Richland and Lexington counties, but two, also to reduce the costs for those that are eligible for DART, to reduce our costs in providing that service and give people more freedom to travel when they would like to travel. This program will be available 24 hours a day, and we were able to access our urbanized 5310 funding as a purchase of service to make these programs happen. Our upcoming projects to continue to bring technology into the Central Midlands and to continue our practice of being a mobility manager is that we're getting ready to launch a mobility as a service app. This app is going to basically provide trip planning assistance, link our automatic vehicle locating system using GTFS real time. It will also be able to be linked to the Blue Bike system, Lyft, and Uber, so that a user can have a one-stop app for basically all transportation opportunities in the Central Midlands. We're going to be partnering with Transit and Move It to make this mobility of a service app happen. And we're hoping that it will make the lives easier for people who want to travel throughout our service area. We're also going to be launching some demonstration microtransit pilots in Northeast Richland and in the town of Irmo. These are areas that have very limited fixed route transit service, but there are a multitude of points of interest such as a Verizon call center, Blue Cross Blue Shield call center, and other employment opportunities that people would like to access. Having this microtransit service, which will be available using an app, through traditional telephone, using small minivans, will be the catalyst to determine if we have enough demand to improve public transit in those areas, with whether it's a deviated fixed route service, fixed route transit, or any other mobility option to move people. This is just kind of some photos of some of the items that we have, or some of our services that we have going on at the Comet, and our branding that we have. We try to link all of our brands together so people can see a unified service between all the various programs we operate. Our ultimate goal is to not just be a public transit operator, but to be a mobility manager and provide multitude of mobility solutions to move people effectively, and being mindful of the tax dollars that we receive from Richland and Lexington counties to support our operations. Federal Transit Administration, through their guidance, has also been very helpful in allowing us to implement a lot of these mobility options, as well as come up with creative ways to increase our ridership that is just not using traditional bus or paratransit programs. With that, happy to answer any questions. And if you want to have details on the programs we offer, feel free to call me or email me.
All right, John, can you just put your email in chat so participants can get it, at least for right now in the short term?
Yes.
There are 3 questions. We're kind of running down on time a little bit in our overall session, but perhaps you can answer some of these briefly. So one person wanted to know how many way vehicles you have in the system, and then a kind of a supporting question was, does the app replace the Comet app?
We have, we generally have 2 way vehicles available. We have them basically between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. for the market program, and then 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. for the nighttime program. The Mobility as a Service app will not replace the Comet app initially, but over time, as we transition people to this new Mobility as a Service app, yes, it will replace the Comet app so that we can have one-stop shopping for people wanting to access transportation services.
All right, thank you. And then Steve had a question about, will the micro transit service be many to few destinations, and will the vehicles be accessible?
Yes, we're going to use low floor minivans for the micro transit pilot, and it will be many to few destinations is how we're intending on testing this pilot.
All right, well, thank you very much. John's put his email in the chat box. We'll do some follow-up when the information goes out to all attendees today. Butch, John, thank y'all very much for the excellent presentations. Certainly a lot of good information that our members can benefit from today. So thank y'all for taking your time to go over this with us. All right, so as we move on to the last part of our agenda, we've got a question and answer session. I'm gonna turn that over to Scott really quick, because I think we've been answering a lot of the questions as we go. And but I'll turn over to Scott for a few minutes, and then I'll give a closing comment, and we'll probably get out of here right on time.
Sounds good, Robert. Thanks. Yeah, I've been trying to answer questions. First few that came in were really directed around CARES Act funds, obligated versus expended, One participant raised the question of clawbacks, which means basically for smaller communities, we've been saying to Congress pretty steadily that they won't spend the money as fast as the New York City MTA. But that does not mean it is not important. And that doesn't mean that it is a reimbursement program. CTA members of all sizes continue to rely on the reimbursement program. We don't believe we're looking at clawbacks right now, but it's an important question. And I'd underscore what Dr. Taylor said about obligate and use those funds. LJ brought up a good point, which was pre-existing FTA funds, pre-existing CARES Act, special accommodations. I think there's a lot of moving parts in that right now, LJ, that hopefully some of it will become a little bit more clear with the over the next 2 weeks, getting through the FY21 approps and kind of how that plays out. But again, Dr. Taylor is right. We do not want to be in a place where we have lots of unexpended money and then have us saying in a reauthorization period, we need all sorts of additional funding in all forms of public transit. That does not sell well. I'd really ask you to do that. Randy from North Carolina wanted to know, will approps address 100% federal and also address the use of operating assistance for urbans? We believe it will, but we haven't seen, the ink's not dry. We got to get that. That's certainly been an issue that we, APTA, and others have been raising consistently, that we need that for another year. But we've got to get that, and we'll see what we get again in the next 2 weeks. Beyond that, distribution of funds in the current COVID stimulus bill. What I've been hearing, and it's rumor only, is that of that 15 billion, that it is largely going to be based on loss of fare and ridership, which I would tell you is greatly going to mean this money is going to go to probably the 20 largest transit systems in the country, all of whom are out of CARES Act funds and are facing massive service changes. I don't know that for a fact, but that's been certainly what I'm hearing, and I want to just make sure that I share that with everyone. We continue to make the point that smaller agencies do need to be brought into this, that ridership in many communities, some of whom we've heard from today, did not decline as fast as it did in major metros. And that's because the smaller the agency, the more essential the ridership. And we're seeing that throughout the country. And we need to have those essential trips continue to happen. The only other thing, Robert, before I turn it over to you, that I want everybody online to consider is we are seeing a pivot now in how we're dealing with the pandemic. And there's two issues. I wrote a letter to all members last week that I want you to look at. One is making sure if your riders, your operators and drivers want it, they are in that group 1B for the vaccine. That is where CDC has put transit drivers. Second, many of you now need to pivot, work with your public health organizations, work with local EOCs on your role in getting people, particularly high risk, at-risk populations, to the vaccine. I'm already hearing from CTA members around the country who are being asked to do that. We're encouraging them to engage. It's an important role for us all to play now as we pivot towards vaccine distribution. And I want everybody here on the line to as well look at that. I talked to FTA leadership yesterday about getting some clarity from FTA at the federal level on what people are allowed to do within, and that CARES Act funding can be used to pay for these trips. But I want to get something that really speaks to this, because I can see this role emerging and ramping up quickly for many of you. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. I'll turn it back to you, Robert.
All right. Again, thank everyone for attending today. Again, this was our first virtual town hall in the Southeast. We're looking forward to possibly doing 2 to 3 of these a year. Again, we've got a lot of different topics that we want to discuss. Opportunity for y'all to ask questions. So, you know, thinking forward to our next virtual town hall, if you've got an exciting project or you're doing something really good that you're willing to share with the rest of us, please reach out to your state delegate. We do have planning meetings to design the town halls, and we would love to hear from y'all. And, you know, any of our partners. I know we've talked a lot about public transit, but transit is a community. We've got human services, we've got other partners. You know, if you're a member in the Southeast and, you know, you're doing something great and innovative, again, talk to your state delegate. We'll be happy to work some time in on the town hall for you. And again, we appreciate FTA participating. We look forward to your continued participation and involvement with us. You're a great resource, and you know, I hope that the membership and the presenters and the comments all conveyed how important FTA is, and the strength of the partnerships that y'all have that trickles all the way down to the local level. So thank you, Dr. Taylor. With this, we will get ready to conclude. And then I would ask when the recording ends, if the panelists could just hang around about 5 minutes for a debrief. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.